So of course I didn't really mean for you not to buy this book. I love this book. It's one of the best books published on how to draw. But there's a book that I recommend even more than this one for my students. And the reason being that this is really more of a textbook. So it's really wordy and it's full of explanations and not a lot of practical exercises. So join me. In the next clip, I'm going to tell you which one I do recommend to all my students. So this book is one of the best books on drawing for people who are not inclined to draw naturally or don't have an artistic bent. Anyone can learn how to draw, which is the fabulous thing about being an art teacher or being able to teach people to draw, that you could really learn to draw whether or not you have a creative bone in your body, because we can unlock the right side of the brain. And Betty Edwards understood this, and when she came up with this theory and all the exercises within this book, she really unlocked drawing for so many people. And this is an absolutely wonderful book, and it has lots and lots of wonderful ideas, but it is extremely wordy. It is more of a textbook than it is anything else, and this is the book that people run out and buy. And even though I adore it, and I had teachers when I was still in high school who were using this book when it first came out, I don't recommend buying this particular book to my students. The reason being because there's so much information in here that most people, unless they're a serious art student, don't want to read. They really want the practical exercises. Now, Betty Edwards loves to chat. So when we buy this book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain Workbook, you're still going to get a lot of that information, but in a more concise way. But what you're really going to get is all the practical exercises, and 10 times more of them in this book. Now, I've had this workbook for a long time. I take it to my studio and I allow my students to use it. So mine's a little bit war-torn and tattered, but it's a tool. So when I bought this book, it came with this picture plane viewfinder, which I know is still available. I don't know if it still comes with this, but I know that this is available separately. And she uses this in a lot of the exercises. It's a really neat tool, and it's just a piece of acetate with some lines drawn on it. And it breaks the picture up into 4 boxes. And she does like to chat. So she's going to explain all this stuff, but in a much more abbreviated fashion. So she has you do a bunch of pre-exercises before you even start. So before you start anything else here, she's going to have you create a self-portrait. Now, I've covered some of these pages up because one of my kids in my studio drew into the book. Of course, I didn't get mad. I never get mad at the kids. I just go, oh, okay. And I just said, you should have done that in your sketchbook and not in my book. And so I just took some stick glue and some copy paper and covered over their drawings. So the first thing you do is you go through, and before you take any of the instructions out of the book, you're supposed to just go ahead. And I usually just tell people to bring a sketchbook and do it in their own sketchbook. So you do a self-portrait, you do a drawing of your hand, you do the corner of a room, you do a few things. And then you start to do copies on some master sketches, all of which are kind of fun exercises. Now we get into some of the actual right brain exercises where your brain will start to shift back and forth. So this can be a face on this side or a vase, a face or a vase. So what you're doing here is you're going to copy what you see on this side over here, and it'll shift between a face or a vase. And it will start getting your right and left brain working. Then we go directly into an exercise where we've taken a Pablo Picasso drawing, we've flipped it upside down, and now we're going to trick our brain by just drawing what we see, but upside down. Okay? We just draw it upside down, and our brain is like, oh, it's just a series of lines where we don't really know what that is. Because if your brain wants to draw what it thinks it sees rather than what it actually sees. So if you turn it upside down, it doesn't know what it's drawing, and then you've confused it, and it knows how to draw. Same with the horse. And then this Knight on a Horse by a master. And on and on. Egon Schiele, beautiful. It's very confusing when you look at just the lines, and so you'll be able to draw it into your textbook. Then we're going to go into contour drawing. And each one she explains the purpose of these exercises. And then she starts to get into this viewfinder and explain what that does. And you can see some of these are blocked off with the four corners and the 4 squares. And so that actually helps make things a little bit easier for you, because you can kind of just draw what's inside the 4 corners. It's just one way to work. Then we get into using negative spaces. So here we've drawn the space around the leaves rather than the leaves, and the space around the plant rather than the plant. The same thing with the chair. We're drawing the spaces around the chair. Here we're back to using the viewfinder. So now we can draw what's within the little boxes in our sketchbook. You can see like every other page is a new exercise and a new thing to draw. It's just got so much to do. So rather than it being words after words and explanation after explanation, it's all practical exercises. So then she's going to get into, you know, finding a view and perspective and how to do that, and, you know, citing, you know, perspective in a room. And then foreshortening on your leg, citing a still life. There's a thing lately in contemporary painting, I don't know if you've noticed, where in a lot of still lifes you'll see like a little pile of books or a little pile of art books will be on a table in a still life. That's a very common thing lately in contemporary painting that keeps popping up. Now we're sighting perspective on a figure and proportions of the head and profile. And now we're copying a master portrait in profile. This is John Singer Sargent. And we're going to draw a profile portrait. And now we're going to draw a still life with an American flag. This is the same student before instruction and post instruction and how far they've come. And this is Betty Edwards' drawing of a flag. Just lighting and shadow. And here, lighting and shadow on a figure. And we've used Charlie Chaplin. Proportions of the face. Copying a full face portrait. This is Pablo Picasso as a young man. These are before and after self-portraits. Before instruction with this method and after. They're pretty outrageous. Ink and brush. If you were to work in ink and brush, I would suggest watercolor paper, 140 pound. Doing some urban landscaping, going outside and working in the landscape. How to shade with cross-hatching and mark making. You can find some examples like these on Pinterest. I can link to my Pinterest drawing boards in this video. I have a lot of teaching boards that you might find interesting. And here's a master drawing with some cross-hatching and mark making. This is based on Leonardo da Vinci's advice to students. And then she goes on for advice for further studies and some extra materials you might be interested in. All in all, a fabulous workbook for those of you interested in drawing and learning about drawing. I hope you enjoyed that flip through of this book. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It really helps my channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. Thanks for joining me.